We talk a lot on this show about the rise and fall of players. But what about the coaches? Which coaches are on the rise that we need to keep an eye on?
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to First and Short, your first place to get college football news and analysis. Today's episode is hosted by Aaron and myself, Mashfik. Before we get started today, just want to do a plug for our show. Please follow First and Short on YouTube, on Apple Podcast, on Spotify Podcast, on, any other types of podcast, Aaron, or any other video websites that we're on. I think we're on all of them.
Yep. Just all the podcasts, all of them.
So select all and just follow on all of them. We appreciate that. Our channel's been growing again. It's been a slow off season, but hey, we're trying to bring you guys the latest, again, news and analysis that we can provide during a time when things are a little bit quiet on campus. Aaron, for today's agenda, it's pretty the agenda's pretty short, but we got a lot to talk about. We made a list of coaches, that we think that you need to keep your eye on. We talk a lot, like you said, on the players. They're on the field, but what about those architects and those people putting in the long hours that are standing right off the field, right? So, Aaron, I know, but when we were planning this episode, you brought up some cool things that you watched on YouTube, which is what got us here in the first place. So why don't you tell us, how did we get here for today's episode?
Yeah. So as you mentioned, I was on my morning work commute and I was listening to some Josh Pate, and he's doing this cool segment, talking to the big time coaches, having a one-on-one conversation with them. And I enjoy getting to listen to those head coaches, that are beginning their career, be kind of candid and talk about their journey and what helped them be successful in their career. And so I was listening to John Summerall today, and one of the things that he really emphasized on his journey, which I really appreciated, is that, he's made friends along the way for the journey, but that doesn't mean everybody's coming and rising to the top with him, right? He made a very good point of, I want to hire the best people for the job at the best time at the best place, right? So I mean, in order to do that, maybe you have a guy who's a great assistant coach at this level or tier or conference here, but maybe his next step isn't to be following you to the next goal. Maybe his best foot forward is to take on a bigger assignment once you leave at that same school, or you know go take on an assignment elsewhere to receive bigger growth. Bigger sculpting and growing as a coach. Um,
That takes a lot of stones to admit that, right? But that's why these guys are the 1% of the 1%, like, to be in the position that they are, to like what you said really stuck out to me. Like, yeah, not everybody's going to be able to come along with me. And that's hard to do. Even, we work office
yep.
jobs and all that sort of stuff. It's like, yeah, you want to come to lunch with me? I don't really like you, but yeah, come on, let's go get lunch. Like that's the only way I can kind of equate it. But it's hard to say no.
Yeah.
But that's why these guys get paid the big bucks at the big programs.
Exactly. So I listened to about 10 of the 30 minutes of the podcast. I will watch the rest later, but all in all, I can tell John Summerall, he's an up and coming football head coach in this league, and I have no doubt he'll do great things at Florida.
You
But
think we'll get to a point where you can start? We'll be able to start interviewing head coaches.
hey, I'd love to see that happen. I'd make the trip
Yeah,
wherever it's at.
yeah.
Yeah.
We got to we got
Um,
to we got to start looking in our network, seeing who's in what. I got friends working in some programs here and there. They might be the
yeah.
janitor or something, but I can figure something out.
Hey, it's all about getting your foot in the door.
Yeah.
But all of this got me thinking, right? Who are the coaches that are up and coming right now, right? Who are the coordinators that are looking to leave their current school and become the CEO elsewhere?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. There's coaches, there's coordinators, there's all types of people at different levels that are looking to, at some point, take control of their own program, put their name on the school's football team, and see what they can do, right? So why don't we start with some of the G5 coaches looking to enter the big leagues, so to speak. I think Boise State, they've So at Boise State, they got Spencer Danielson. He's the head coach. He's kind of maintained Boise State's, group of six, or yeah, it's a group of six now. Supremacy. I said G5, but it's really G6 now. Um,
Mhm.
they're coming off a Mountain West title, and they had a CFP appearance. A couple years ago when they had Ashton Genty. He's widely considered, the next big thing coming from out west, and he'll likely, depending on what happens with the Pac-12 in the future, but he'll likely be a first call for many Pac-12 schools, or maybe even a Big 12 school. I don't think he's Big 10 or SEC material just yet, but he definitely has the chops to like make that next step. Right now, his position at Boise State and that whole trajectory, it's really been legendary. So he was a GA, he was a graduate assistant to a head coach in just 7 years, and he's actually the first FBS interim coach. So he wasn't like named the head coach at the beginning of the season. He was an interim coach to win a conference title, and this happened back in 2023. He went 12-2 that year with Ashton Genty a couple years ago, and then he went 9-5 last year. But still, he clinched his third straight Mountain West title, and he actually matches Lincoln Riley's feat of 3 championships in 3 seasons, so three-peat in that sense. Let's talk about his coaching style. I think this will be a good practice to keep it standardized for all these people that we're about to talk about. Let's His coaching style, it's kind of like a transformational toughness and servant leadership, right? He wants to see leadership. I mean, every coach wants to see leadership, but his is a little bit different. He is a defensive specialist, and he prioritizes that character building and the and being process oriented. His the culture there, it's famously convinced stars like Ashton Genty, like I said, to remain all those years instead of getting plucked away by NIL and all the millions of dollars that people were offering him. That's what was able to keep Ashton Genty in place, and they were able to make that awesome run. When Danielson does eventually make that leap, if he decides to, I think a good match would be he is a California native and he has deep regional ties. I think he would be an ideal fit for maybe I mentioned Pac-12 earlier, but I think he would be a good match actually, now that I think about it, for a Big 12 program like Arizona or Utah that kind of matches his style. He wants to be there for a while. He wants to really build a good program, and his ability to really forge a strong defensive identity and a really resilient culture makes him a top choice for one of those programs, I think.
Okay. Oh, interesting, interesting. So a guy that I have on my list, is going to be Jerry Mack out of Kennesaw State, right?
Okay, okay.
Um,
Right up your neighborhood, right?
yeah, yeah, right around the corner. He's a specialist, and those rapid turnarounds. I mean, um, you know, he helped and was a part of in his coaching career and coaching journey. He was a part of the top scoring offense at Tennessee, being an assistant coach there. He had a stint with the Jaguars a year after that, and then he took over Kennesaw in 2025. So after 1 year, he inherited a 2-10 team and then led them to a 10-4 season in a Conference USA championship. He also earned the Paul Bear Bryant Newcomer Coach of the Year.
I
Um,
gotta say, Aaron, my sister goes to Kennesaw.
mhm.
She has still not been to a game. Her sophomore year is wrapping up, and I'm like, dude, Jerry Mack, this guy is doing great things. You need to go. And she's like, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah, I'll go. But whatever. I'm gonna
yeah,
have to go before her.
yeah, yeah. We definitely got to go check him out before he moves on to bigger and better things because this guy, he employs a kind of an ultra up tempo, right? It's like basketball on grass, and he
It's a good
creates
way to
this
put it.
spread offense that just moves, right? And his people over schemes philosophy kind of prioritize building relationships to navigate the transfer portal era. He's a relentless elite recruiter with a history of improving offenses across all levels. I think I even saw an article where he said on the podcast, his players going elsewhere for NIL opportunities, he said he loves it. He says it's a sign that your program is being successful and developing
Yeah.
players the right way, right?
I mean, he's being truthful, right? Like he knows what Kennesaw is compared to an Alabama or an Ohio State. But if his school ends up being a top destination for that next level, then there's going to be a certain level of players that's going to like keep their eyes on Kennesaw coming out of high school,
Mhm.
right?
Exactly, exactly. So with that being said, he knows what level, what tier Kennesaw's at now. Let's talk about, that potential place he could go next for to elevate the standard or level of play. Um, and I think, with his Southern roots and SEC experience at Tennessee, he'd be a prime candidate for an ACC or SEC job. I'm thinking, programs like Georgia Tech, Arkansas State or Mississippi State, right? All have those high powered, explosive offenses that they're trying to, wield to the forefront of college offensive excellence, right? He'd be a heavy, strong fit for these regional teams.
Nice. Yeah.
Hmm.
Excited to see what he does. Yeah, he probably if he keeps that up, yeah, I doubt he'll be there much longer. There were a couple other coaches that I wanted to mention. I kind of grouped them together. They remind me of each other a lot. This is going to be Billy Napier and Dan Mullen. Both of these guys were successful before going to Florida. They got to Florida, didn't do well. They had varying degrees of success, and now they're both at a G5 level. Billy Napier, he's at James Madison. James Madison and Dan Mullins over there in the desert in UNLV. I'll start with Billy Napier real quick. His focus was really on like fixing the infrastructure that was left behind after Dan Mullen's departure. But his overall record was what, 22-23, and not great, obviously. So he got hired he got fired in the middle of the season, got hired in December 2025. So now he's back in the Sun Belt where he found most of his success back when he was at University of Louisiana. I think, if we had to distill his coaching style into like a title. He is a CEO type of recruiter. He was great at the recruiting part. He was great at keeping a lot of admin staff people. He loved he had an army of staff people. I remember on social media, everyone was making fun of how many people were in the football class photo. But that's because he had a really analytical approach. He wanted a lot of people to have very simple jobs so that everyone did it well. Um, Unfortunately, maybe analysis by paralysis, maybe you could say, like thing that didn't necessarily translate into on the field results. He was a very run heavy, slow football team, and yeah, it just didn't work out in the SEC for him. In the future, though, maybe he'll do great things at James Madison, and once that happens, let's say it does, I think that'll put him in a better position for like a developmental Power Four team, not necessarily Florida where they expect success immediately. So I'm thinking like a South Carolina or a Kentucky that prioritizes the organizational process that Billy Napier is really good at. Dan Mullen, on the other hand, offensive wizard, he hated recruiting. He just wanted to go, right? So he did take some time off in between Florida and UNLV. He had a 10-4 in the Mountain West last year. And he won the 2025 Steve Spurrier first year Coach of the Year award. He had Anthony Calandria, turned him into a conference the top offensive player in the conference is what I meant to say.
Hmm.
His coaching style is very different. He's very X's and O's, like game plan, that type of thing. He wants to prioritize very clever scheming over recruiting. He really is good at adapting his offensive identity to the player's strengths. So I think he's going to have more success at UNLV. And once he's done with that, once he's done playing the slots, he's going to be a premier reclamation project. He's going to be looking for that next chance again, I think, and I think he'll do great in the Big 12 or the ACC, like a Syracuse or NC State. I don't think he'll want to go back into that high expectation kind of role again, but in the big leagues, lower expectation, I think he'll do great. I mean, even Arkansas comes to mind. He's a plug and play winner. He was able to do it at Mississippi State. I think he can do it at that level in the Power Four. So that's what I think about those two coaches that were at the top, right? They were at the top kind of had a little tumble, but they're on their way back up.
Yeah, yeah, no, that makes sense. Next court category we have, let's think about some of those coaches who are, already in the Power Four, but maybe they can, advance to even a bigger program within the Power Four, right?
Yeah.
One coach comes to mind for this category, and it's going to have to be Rhett Lashley at SMU, right? He's in a very unique position. I mean, he's guided, SMU from the Greater Five now to the ACC, and just signed a massive extension through 2032, which makes him one of the the 10 paid highest coaches in the country. I think he's in the plus 9 million range. While he is home, right? He's constantly linked to those top tier opening jobs like Florida, LSU, if they were to open again, right? Um, Simply because his offensive system is so portable, right? He's led SMU on some historic, transition into the ACC, capped it off with the 2024 college football playoff berth, and it followed a 9-4 campaign in 2025 and a bowl victory at the Holiday Bowl. So I mean, he's turned SMU into a recruiting juggernaut, and honestly, he's turned them into a team that like people have eyes on now.
A
Before, I
lot.
mean,
Yeah, I was gonna say a lot of eyes were on Rhett Lashley, even in this crazy coaching carousel cycle that we just went through. His name was linked to the LSU job. His name was linked to the Ole Miss job after Lane Kiffin left. His name was linked to a lot of jobs that were available, and like you said, he's signed on until 2032. That's 6 years, right? You don't see that much right now. And
mhm.
that happened because SMU knows what they have and they want to keep him around long term.
Yeah, yeah. So I mean, within that, what they have a coaching style that it mocks a discipline of like a power spread, right? He runs a high tempo offense that balances that vertical over the top passing with also a physical run game. Uh, his teams at SMU have consistently ranked in the top 10 nationally in scoring offense and explosive plays. Um, again, right? You said he was in some of those just pivotal openings in the college football playoff talks last year. The perfect match for him in the future is probably one of those, sleeping giant programs in the SEC or the Big Ten, right? His alma mater is Arkansas, so that could easily be a fit. He was a coordinator at Auburn, so could easily. It's going to take a few years, but he could easily step back into a role there, that program. Um, he continues to excel in high resource and environments where he can utilize his recruiting ties and close that talent gap quickly.
The nice thing about him is that he has a long runway, got a lot of money coming in. He can wait for the right title. He doesn't necessarily, I mean, he's in the ACC. He doesn't necessarily, a lot of the coaches that we mentioned before, they might have to take the first job that opens up, right? They don't know what's going to open up again in the future.
Hmm.
But Rhett Lashley, he has the benefit and yeah, he has the benefit of like waiting for the right place for him, whatever he feels is right. Everything is set up for him to succeed, things of that nature. So good for him. Um, so yeah, we talked about a lot of coaches. I wanted to, and they get a lot of spotlight as they should. I wanted to focus on a few coordinators. As you know, coordinators can make the jump uh, to head coaching as well, and so I there's a few that I wanted to cover that we wanted to cover. I think the best one to start with, the one and only Glenn Schumann, the defensive coordinator at Georgia. At this point, he's probably the most overqualified coordinator in the country. He's been rumored to leave the last like 2 or 3 years to take a variety of jobs. The previous defensive coordinator, Dan Lanning, he immediately jumped from that defensive coordinator position after a national title win and just went to Oregon. Glenn Schumann, not to say they're going to win a national title, but going to make a similar jump, I think. So anyway, in 2025, his defense ranked fourth nationally in rush defense and 10th nationally in scoring defense. So he has, between Alabama and Georgia, 6 national championship rings, and he's widely considered, the next Kirby Smart. Um, I expect a major Power 4 program to kind of back up the truck for him this December. They're going to offer him money. It's going to be a big school because they've seen what he's able to do against the best competition, right? Yeah, they've had some playoff losses the last couple of years, but they know he can hang with the best of the best. His coaching style, as a defensive coordinator, he runs a multiple pro 3-4 system that it prioritizes, elite communication, consistency over flash. He's known for his inside out philosophy, where the inside linebackers act as the brains of the defense. So it's I know, Georgia football focus was passion, fire, energy. That's what his focus is on, and that's what really is the heartbeat of that Georgia defense, especially. I think in the future, Schumann, he's been real patient, kind of like Rhett Lashley that we talked about before. He's waiting for the right job to open, maybe. Maybe the 26, 27 time, maybe that's going to be, maybe he'll feel like that's his time. He's a prime candidate for a tier 1 SEC job, like a Florida or like a Michigan, but those just got filled, right? So, but I'm just saying, like those types of jobs. I don't know. Who
Right.
do, who do you think, who do you think would be a good match for him that you feel like might open up this year, Aaron? I can't. I couldn't put one on him this time for him.
Hmm. I mean, it's hard to say. Maybe that Florida State job. I think
Eh,
that's a sleeping giant waiting to,
that's a good
you
one.
know, yeah. You never know
Yeah,
what can
Florida
happen there.
State, because I don't see him making it to the end of the year. Dabo might call it quits in a bit.
Yeah.
Retire. Yeah, I definitely think he wants to stay in the South. I think he's an Alabama alumni, but I don't know if Kalen DeBoer is going to be leaving this year.
Hmm.
So maybe he's waiting on that one. But yeah, this one was a tough one. I couldn't find a future match for this guy.
Yeah. So we have another coordinator on the list. This one, an offensive coordinator, and that's Joe Sloan. He is the new offensive coordinator for Kentucky this upcoming year. And his journey has been quite the roller coaster. After developing Jaden Daniels into a Heisman winner, he's now the 2025 coaching shuffle. At LSU, he was relieved of his duties in October. He, however, had a stock that remained really high. He quickly was snatched up by Kentucky as their new offensive coordinator for the next season. Um, the reason we think he's going to be one of those guys that gets snatched up next for a head coaching job is because, he's a player first architect. He doesn't force a system, he builds around his quarterback strengths, right? So if it's a dual threat like Daniels or a pocket passer like Garrett Nussmeier, who threw for 4,000 yards in 2024 under Sloan. He finds a way to, generate explosive plays with the guys that he has. Um, the future, he's going to need a successful stint at Kentucky to prove that he can thrive, outside of that bubble at LSU that he had, or that talent bubble. If he does this, I think he's a perfect fit for, a, a group of 5 head coaching jobs, right? He could land somewhere as a head coach in the Sun Belt or the American Conference, right? So you could see programs like Appalachian State, Coastal Carolina, maybe even Georgia Southern. They would love his offensive pedigree and his recruiting prowess. Once he potentially could move there, that could lead to Power 4 jobs if he's successful at those schools.
So I'm looking at his career timeline. He was at Louisiana Tech for quite a bit, 2013 to 2021. He had a variety of jobs. He eventually became the offensive coordinator for a little bit. Then he was at LSU for a bit, and then that kind of had, like you said, it was a roller coaster. He's at Kentucky now. How many years do you feel like he'll need at Kentucky um before he can or should make the next step?
Um,
Assuming good years. We're assuming good years.
honestly, with this new era and everything, it could take one great year or 2 good years before somebody comes knocking at the door.
Yeah. Yeah, coaches do seem to be leaving pretty fast.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, I want to round out our list. One last guy. He's currently the offensive coordinator at Florida. Was at Georgia Tech a little bit before. His name is Buster Faulkner. So I think even in that interview that the Josh Pate video with John Summerall, he's now that he's the new offensive coordinator at Florida. He is a blend of, air raid and pro style, concepts in that fashion. He If he's able to unlock Florida's offense, which Florida Gator fans have been wanting, like the potential and the abilities that their players have to just be unlocked, right? If that happens this year, I think he'll be on a fast track to a head coaching job in the ACC or the Sun Belt or something, somewhere in the South, very very soon. He is currently like the it name in the SEC, after being named the 2025 Football Scoop Offensive Coordinator of the Year. A couple of years ago, he was at Georgia Tech. He took Georgia to eight overtimes, right, as a first year coordinator. He parlayed a massive turnaround at Georgia Tech. He took them from 125th in scoring to the top of the ACC, and then obviously he leveraged that into this job here that he's got at Florida. So I think his coaching style, it's kind of like he's able to. He's kind of like a chameleon. He's able to match whatever you've got going on. He blends. He used to be at Georgia and he was under Todd Monken as an analyst. So he blends Todd Monken's pro style concepts with the air raid principles, like I mentioned, and he's had a punishing run game every year that he's been an offensive coordinator. So he's elite at layering the passing game on top of run threats. And so that's what makes his offensive notoriously, difficult to scout. It's hard to tell what he's planning to do. I think in the future, he is a Georgia native from the South. He's been a winner at every level, high school, D2, FBS. I think, yeah, he's on fast track to be a head coach somewhere in the ACC or the SEC, somewhere in the South. Like I said, I think when Brent Keys, I don't know how many years he's got. He's a pretty young guy, but I think he would be a home run hire for Georgia Tech, as a return kind of coach, or even a program like South Carolina. We've been mentioning South Carolina a lot on this show, but I think he has that CEO personality and the technical chops to do well at the next level to lead a major program.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's about it, guys. That's the coaches we want to make sure that you keep your eyes and ears on. A lot of them will make good moves this year with their current teams, and then we'll see in December who's going to be moving on to the next step. Yes, sir. So appreciate you guys watching, and we'll catch you on the next episode.
Alrighty.